Hey, if you're new to this channel, I just really quickly wanted to say that this is not my usual brand of content. However, some background. Early one morning, a friend of mine and I got into a debate over a YouTube series turned TV show that I used to love, and they still love. But after going through this debate, I felt I almost needed to get this one off my chest. And who knows, maybe this video will never see the light of day. But just in case, let's talk about RWBY. The date is July 18th, 2013. While I sat around trying to find some other show to fill the void that season 10 of Red vs. Blue left while I awaited season 11, a friend of mine told me to come over to his house quickly to watch the trailer of a new show he found on YouTube. So, of course, I go over and we sit in front of his computer to watch the Ruby Red trailer. I was blown away. Honestly, even though that's what the script I wrote myself here says, it's a bit of an understatement. My tiny little brain at the time could not handle the awesomeness that the trailer exuded. And shortly following, we found the first ever episode, and after watching it, I couldn't wait for the second episode to drop. I was in love. Fast forward to February 3rd, 2021. I'm a bit late to watching the current season of RWBY. Having just gotten out of boot camp in mid November of 2020 and coming hot off the heels of COVID, I hadn't even known that the new season had dropped until I had the sudden urge to binge watch seasons 1 through 7. And my thoughts of it were this: seasons 1 through 3 were amazing, and they always will be. Seasons 4 and 5, to me, were kind of meh. Season 6 wasn't terrible, but it was lackluster. But season 7, honestly, a series I had loved had finally lost its touch with me with season 7. To start it off greatly, we finally get to see General Ironwood again. After season 4, we really hadn't seen heads or tails of him. And in at the most, we've had him mentioned in passing in a newscast. But we actually got to see him again. And he happens to be my second favorite character, only after Nora, of course. I have no idea why that could be. But regardless, we got to meet General Ironwood again. And after a multitude of creative decisions I found rather poor in nature, I was being given a character that that in the middle of my service, I could connect to rather well. To say that my feelings would be betrayed between season 7 and 8 would be an understatement. To understand why, first let me get into what I love about Ironwood. What I've loved about him even before my service in the military in the first place. And don't get me wrong, I liked Ironwood, but I didn't really get to have a true understanding and appreciation for the character until during and after my military career. He was a man who, at his heart, loved the people. A man who openly debated Ozpin for sending kids to fight the Grimm, saying, and I quote, "Do you honestly believe that your children can win a war?" A line that a lot of people, when arguing, what they did to Ironwood is out of character, they tend to skip over. It's not the outright argument that you're used to hearing. When you think of debate, you think of a full-on headstrong debate, but Ironwood didn't need that. His point got across. It was clear he didn't like sending kids into combat. And he also actively wanted to remove the human element in the battle against the Grimm to stop senseless violence and death. He shows this by showcasing the Atlesian Knights, something that, up until this point, was pretty unprecedented in all of Remnant. He also greenlit several different projects in order to help do this. One of them creating a beloved character, Penny. And when Amity was attacked, he immediately take to the skies to fight the Grimm? No, no. He stayed behind and actively helped remove citizens from Amity to get them down to the ground. He even actively helped our main characters escape Amity. And while helping them, he shows another instance of caring for the people who fight the Grimm, saying, you have two choices. You can stay and defend your kingdom, or save yourselves. No one will fault you if you do. This portrayed to me and many other people watching the series that despite being a general in the military, which would normally portray him as a cold and callous man, he was kind-hearted and always put the people first. Why, of course, do I bring all of this up? And where is all of this going? Well, in order to take a look at why I and many others are disappointed in what feels like a rather uncharacteristic and unrealistic shift in his character, you have to understand the reason behind why so many people loved him. First thing that I would like to address is that many people like to cite that Ironwood has a bad habit of expecting people to trust him without giving any trust in return, which is explicitly stated by Glinda back in Volume 2. He's also handed control of the Amity Festival for security purposes, and lines the streets with Atlas robots while completely going behind Ozpin's back. However, this is directly refuted in the show itself when the Veil Council made the decision to remove Ozpin as head of security and replace him with Ironwood. Hi, this is Future Jericho speaking. Originally, the point that I made was that the Veil Council spoke to Ozpin after this moment, saying that they wanted to speak to him, citing that as a reference that he was already on thin ice. And while I still believe that, it was due to the fact that Ironwood gave a report to them based on what was the current going-ons in Vale, which, to be fair, would mean clearly they have that this isn't the first time that this has happened, as they said that if you can't ensure the safety, you can't be in charge, and after the reports, they're beginning to have some concerns, which means that they've somewhat already had concerns, but Ironwood has really just pushed them to the forefront. Rather than only taking into account the words of Glinda, we should also take into account the actions of James Ironwood himself. In all of Season 7, Ironwood would go to prove that Glinda is clearly a liar, although that is a fault of the writers and not the character. Glinda could have had no idea what the writers were going to do in Season 7. Because you see, if they had portrayed him as such a person in Season 7, her point would still be valid. But they didn't. In fact, they have him go out of his way to make the first-year dropouts of Team RWBY and what's left of Team Juniper into licensed, hunters and huntresses, as well as having him openly tell them exactly what he was doing, why he was doing it, and also what he had no plans of doing. So, in what way, shape, or form did he give them to distrust him, other than past authority figures have all betrayed their trust? Well, let's actually talk about that, since, we're already on the topic. Mainly the fact that Leo and Ozpin have totally lied to their faces and have been doing so from the start, with Team RWBY even eventually coming to the conclusion that there should be no lies or half truths among them and those that they trust. And yet they distrust Ironwood. But from day one, upon meeting the team again, Ironwood did nothing but express his concerns with Ozpin hiding all of the information. Then he tells them his plans in detail. Keep in mind, of the people in the room that he's speaking to, he's only known one for more than maybe a few days. And that one person is Crow. That is the only person in the room he knows explicitly. So after he has done the exact opposite thing that the rest of the authority figures have done, what does Team RWBY decide to do? The very same thing Ozpin was doing and fed him lies of omission during their entire time there. Outright lying to him about the fact that Salem can't be killed. Yang and Blake even actively cause dissent by helping Robin steal from him and citing that he shouldn't have been taking resources in the first place and that Mantle needed them more. But if we're going to bring that up, we have to take an objective look at what is happening in Mantle and Atlas from Ironwood's standpoint. Not that of a subordinate or of a citizen, but of a general and a leader. You are in charge of 2 cities. You witnessed the fall of another city due to an infiltrated attack. You were looking to restore the connection to the rest of the world in order to band together against a common foe. But in order to do that, you have to take the supplies that would help rebuild the walls that are to safeguard one of the cities that you are in control of. You know your enemies are on the horizon and that your people are likely to be the next target. You may have a powerful military force, but the attack at one of the previous cities mentioned proves that your military force is not infallible. What do you do? A, divert resources in order to possibly acquire reinforcements or even perhaps find a place to evacuate to? Or B, continue to build up a wall but forsake any possibility of international communication? Don't worry, I'll give you a second to ponder these options. In fact, if you need to, pause the video. Are you done? You back? Sweet. If you chose option A, congratulations, you're now the villain of RWBY's story, because that is the exact same choice that Ironwood made. And if you chose B, congratulations, you are the hero. But that's not really how it works. If you really look at the options, neither of them are ideal, because forsaking international communication while all nations are working together against the struggle of the Grimm, you now remove yourself from any way of acquiring outside help, reinforcements. But forsaking the wall means you get that communication. You'll have the other nations to help you. But you no longer have the protection needed if the attack comes directly for you. Really, this problem is entirely ambiguous, and no one can say that there is a right option. Both have potentially disastrous consequences. Do I believe that Ironwood's dissent is unreasonable? Yes, but I will never say that it is impossible. Because as much as I love him, it isn't. He very well could have actually turned out the way that the show wanted him to. But the method used was unbelievable and totally destroyed many people's perception of how the character that Rooster Teeth carefully created. Now, the option that this Now, despite the option that Ironwood chose, I cannot say that Team RWBY made an objectively worse choice. They just made a different choice, and they can't be blamed for that. Nor would I want to blame them for that. But portraying them as objectively correct and Ironwood as objectively wrong is objectively wrong in its own point, in its own right. Essentially, it comes down to personal morals and ideals. Some people will believe that saving Mantle is the correct option, while others will believe that constructing Amity is. But at the end of the day, neither option is wrong. But the one thing that is undeniable is that Ironwood would never threaten an entire city. Nor would he ever commit politically motivated murder. For a man that cares so much about people, especially people he considers to be his people, an actual action like that would be appalling, to say the least. Not to mention, in Volume 3, Ironwood gives the kids a chance to run away. He doesn't expect children to want to stay and fight. If we are talking about the same man who isn't going to force kids into a battle they have been training for, then why would we ever believe that he is willing to nuke his own people? If you enjoyed, please consider subscribing. Hell, I might even be willing to consider making another one of these if it gets enough likes, if it's even posted. And I hope to see you guys next time. But until then, peace.